Hello everyone! If you are a Pathologic fan, Christmas has come 5 days early. We have Pathologic 3 news and we have a lot of it. If you are here or new here, let me catch you up. Pathologic Classic is a game that has 3 routes showing 3 healers' approach to solving a plague. Pathologic 2 is a sequel / remastering / reimagined version of one of the routes, and Pathologic 3 is the next reimagining of another one of these routes, this one belonging to our dear Bachelor. I could spend an hour diving into what we've been told about Pathologic 3, but I have 2 prior videos doing that. I think 3 actually, now that I'm thinking about it, so I will have links for those if you're interested, after watching this one, of course. So if you don't know me, that's my bad. I usually go by Cobbs, but I stream primarily on Twitch and enjoy making videos about games that I like, and the Pathologic franchise is pretty much at the top of that list. Today, the developers of Pathologic 3 blessed us with more than an update on this upcoming game. The full version of Pathologic 3 is set for a planned release of 2025, but it looks like we'll be getting a prequel demo of the game at some point in the new year. There's a lot to dive into here, so I'm going to try to go step by step through what we've learned today in a way that makes some sort of sense. Then I'm putting my tinfoil theory cap on because I have ideas. Let's start though with the Steam post on the Steam page for Pathologic 3. This Steam post is announcing the demo / prequel, Pathologic 3 Quarantine. I'm going to refer to it as Quarantine from here on out to differentiate it from the Pathologic 3 Steam page, so just be mindful of that. Pathologic 3 Quarantine, or Quarantine, is the prelude to Pathologic 3. Quote-unquote, an action or event serving as an introduction to something more important. All of this checks out. Thank you, Google, for the definition of prelude. This will be similar to Marble Nest, but instead of being a completely separate story, it will, quote-unquote, set the stage for the story and pull back the curtains a bit for those curious about the game's world. This bit makes me so over the moon excited for Theoryland, but I'm going to hold off on that until the end of the video. We've been told it will partially overlap with the intro to Pathologic 3, which makes me think we'll be ending with this scene. In my script, I have show trailer here. But we will have several unique set pieces showcasing the Capitol and maybe Thanatica, which is also called the Bachelor's Lab. We also got this stunning photo on the Steam post on the Pathologic 3 Steam page, and I want to dive into that a little bit real quick. First off, beautiful, 10 out of 10, should be in a museum. I've been searching through the various discords of Pathologic stuff that I'm in, because I myself do not speak Russian. It looks like the buildings we see here are an electro theater, photography, preparation college, bakery, society of something something, a sweets shop, and a drugstore. I have ideas about this, but I think I'm sort of reaching a little bit, so I'm gonna hold off. It is cool though that we see a theater and a photography store here, as, you know, the theater is sort of a big deal for this franchise as a whole. And there's a huge emphasis on photography and cameras in the trailer. Then there's the drugstore, which I think, you know, it's kind of on the nose. If you don't get that connection, it's because, you know, drugs, but anyways, let's look at the Steam page for Pathologic 3 Quarantine now. I said I was going to call it Quarantine, so from here on out, I will refer to it as Quarantine. At the top here, we have some beautiful in-game screenshots that I'd like to talk about. But aside from that, it's so cool to see a graphically updated town on the Gorkon. And we've seen that obviously from the Pathologic 3 Steam page, but I just wanted to kind of gush over it here because I'm just so excited for this game. Anyways, the first screenshot we have available to us is one from the main Pathologic 3 Steam page. This makes me think that there is some relevance to what we will see in Quarantine in this photo. We see Dinkovsky holding the device we saw in IPL's post back in December of 2022 on VK. We aren't quite sure what this does, we're never really told. It could be an adapted version of the Plague Finder, but it also could function as a plague detector of sorts. I wonder if we will see him developing this tool in Quarantine, or at the very least referencing its development with some set pieces. Next we have the photo of the Capitol that we saw in the Pathologic 3 Steam page Steam post. This is their main selling point, you know, the Capitol being this new set piece. So if they're trying to use the first photo to tie in the main gameplay element of Pathologic 3, which is visually, in my opinion, the most enticing, you know. It's dark, it's eerie, you've got the executioner. This is technically, I think, a psychological horror game, so it makes sense that that is their front look at me photo. But the second one, being a photo of the Capitol, is obviously such a huge like visual tie-in, like I don't want to say advertisement, but something eye-catching, right? Something eye-catching. Because as a longtime fan of the series, we have never really seen the Capitol, and now they're like, hey, not only does the gameplay look super fucking cool, but here's this set piece that's been referenced for like 20 years now. You're gonna get to see it. We're giving it to you. You're welcome. I've already kind of talked about what I think we're seeing here, so I won't go too much more further into this photo, but I think functionally in terms of advertising, it makes sense to have that gameplay photo first, because visually it is the most interesting to someone who's walking up and has never seen anything about this game before, right? But then that second photo, that is for the fans. That is for the people who have kept up with this series for long enough to know that we have not seen the Capitol before and it is right there. And they want us to know that we are going to have access to it. Please don't take all of this to heart. I'm not a marketing expert. I have never taken a business class in my life. I was a psych major. I was actually a therapist for a few years. So I'm probably not the best person to be taking marketing advice from, but just based off of logic, that's kind of how I'm approaching what I think they're doing with these photos. IPL, feel free to hire me for your marketing needs. I'm obviously qualified. The next photo we see here is of Clara and the rod. Interesting. It's interesting to me too that we don't have any pictures of Artemy in the quarantine lineup. We obviously have a photo of him in the Pathologic 3 Steam page, but we don't have any photos of him here. I think obviously that makes sense because this is the Bachelor's game. It makes sense that we're not super putting an emphasis on the other healers. But here's Clara right here in the rod. It's third in our lineup, so if the gameplay element is the Capitol is the coolness factor for new fans and returning fans, the next photo of importance that they thought was relevant is a photo of Clara. I might be looking way too deeply into the lineup of these photos, but for whatever reason, it kind of stuck out to me. And I think it's because they reused a photo that was already on the Pathologic 3 Steam page. So it made me think that not only them putting that as the first photo in this lineup was intentional, but it made me think about why they put the rest of these photos in the order that they did, right? Clara and the Bachelor obviously have more involvement with each other, I would say, in the Bachelor's route in Classic than in Artemy's route, since the Bachelor is investigating Clara as someone who may have caused the plague. And Clara has this very interesting tie-in with the plague. I think sometimes she's referenced as the plague. Clara is someone I am not super knowledgeable on. So a lot of what I'm saying here has been pulled from Mine and Make's conversations. Go follow her on Twitter. But what's interesting to me is, why is Clara's photo, someone who interacts with the Bachelor once he gets to the town on the Gorkon, included in a promo for Quarantine, a game that is largely thought to be set in the Capitol before he gets to the town on the Gorkon? I have theory-ish, right, that the events in the town of the Gorkon, so what Bachelor and Artemy experience, although different, have been orchestrated by a variety of figures, and we'll go more into that when we get to Theoryville. But the point that I want to bring up here is I don't think any of the orchestrators of these events know about Clara. I don't think she was someone they anticipated. And there's such a large emphasis with the Steam pages that we get for The Bachelor that encourage us to analyze the things around us, look at the world, connect the dots. Clara is a dot that I don't think the powers that be anticipated being in this town. I don't think Isidore anticipated Clara's existence. I don't think Simon Kane anticipated Clara's existence. So I think the tie-in between her and The Bachelor and how their stories interconnect might be hinted at in Quarantine. I just can't think of a good reason for why they would include her photo in a prequel a prelude to Pathologic 3, right? In the prequel, I guess, a demo where we're not even in the town on the Gorkon yet. There's a piece that I'm missing here. I'm not connecting the dots, as IPL has instructed us to do. The dots are all over the place and there's no lines connecting them. But I do think there's something there. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm excited to see. Moving on from the mindfuck that Clara's existence is, photo 4 appears to be us with Yulia, something that makes sense. It is another town on the Gorkon set piece, which kind of confuses me a little bit, but I think what we're seeing here is where Yulia resides in the town on the Gorkon, which is the Trammel. Yulia is in charge of designing the roads, so it looks like the roads are the main topic of conversation between her and the Bachelor. It also looks like there might, big emphasis on might, be a design of the cathedral on the wall behind her, which could be an allusion to the fact that the cathedral is the main hub of the time travel mechanic that we'll see in Pathologic 3, but I'm not intelligent enough to tell you what exactly this drawing, or any of the drawings realistically, are trying to show. What is important to note here, though, is that the Kanes call Yulia to the town of the Gorkon to assist in the philosophical growth of the town. Bachelor Dankovsky is called by Isidore, who is also kind of summoned by Simon Kane, since he is visiting to talk to Simon Kane. So in a sense, I think the Kanes, he's also arriving because of the Kanes, right? This also ties in with the Stomaton twins, which we'll see in one of the later photos, but I won't get too ahead of myself on that one. Next up is a photo of the train track and several bulls. This seems to be the location where Bad Grief and Notkin's gang are located, and coming up on where Artemis' base of operations is ultimately in Pathologic 2. Truthfully, there's a huge lore piece here about trains, their arrival, and bulls, but I'll leave it here. Trains are important to the town of the Gorkon for a variety of reasons, and the fact that they haven't arrived in Pathologic 2 day 1 is one of the first signs of trouble, other than the 2 murders. And bulls are important because they are the main figure of the kin's spiritual and religious beliefs. Trains and bulls. That's all I got for this photo. I think someone more caught up on that side of the lore could go way further into it than I could, but trains and bulls. Then we get a photo of Peter. He is sitting at a desk, but it doesn't really look like he's examining or looking at anything other than what is in his cup. This also looks to be the upstairs of the Broken Heart pub, which is the pub his brother Andre runs. This could be the representation of Andre in this photo, because I don't think they would leave him out intentionally, but this is, I guess, the other piece of the experts and visionaries that were invited to this town to encourage philosophical growth by the Kanes. Honestly, that's kind of all I'm getting here. Obviously, they have the polyhedron tie-in, but I don't quite see anything in this photo that makes me think there's something going on with the polyhedron here, other than, Peter being here himself. But it's nice to see some familiar faces again. Let's move on to the info we get on the Steam page. I'm going to attempt to keep this part brief because I really want to theorize on what we learned from all of this, but as we've learned, I'm sure if you've watched any of my videos, I don't think I can keep anything brief. Anyways, to preface, I'm going to go through the Quarantine Steam page side by side to the Pathologic 3 Steam page because we've already kind of been told what this game is and what Patho 3 will look like, but I want to see what the differences between the two pages are. More specifically, I want to see what they are highlighting on the Quarantine page that is different from the corresponding section of the Pathologic 3 Steam page. I think this will show us what IPL is actually trying to tell or show us, since we know that is never a straightforward answer, and it will give us a clearer idea of what to look for when we get access to Quarantine. We first have the About This Game section on both pages. In Pathologic 3, it jumps right into the award-winning story piece section, but we get additional context on Quarantine's Steam page. Truthfully, I don't see anything super weird here. On the surface, it seems like they're just adding additional context since there are now 2 Pathologic 3 labeled Steam pages, but I will note this. In the Pathologic 3 Steam page, when you search for the term death, nothing comes up. So even though death is Dankovsky's biggest op, it is not mentioned at all in the Steam page for his game. But in Quarantine, it is mentioned once, and it is capitalized in this little About This Game bit. Examine patience, uncover strange secrets, and make first steps towards defeating death. Since we are in the capital and the location of his thanatology study, it makes sense that his biggest adversary, I'm being surface level here because we can go a lot deeper on that, but his biggest adversary is mentioned. I think maybe this could show us that we will see a clearer idea on what death is for Dankovsky or what he sees in it, or just something about his study of defeating death. The next major difference I see between them is on Pathologic 3 Steam page. The first section is titled Rebirth of an Award-Winning Story. Then the bit about a young doctor searching for immortality, 12 days, etc., etc. On Quarantine's Steam page, we have the section titled An Award-Winning Story Begins. They mention Dankovsky, then immediately refer to the powers that be and their opinion on Dankovsky's search for immortality. This piece ends with, the rumor of an immortal man who lives in a faraway steppe town may be exactly the breakthrough he needs, if he can get to him. The if he can get to him piece, oh my god, we are going to learn so much, I think, about the interactions and relationships between Bachelor Dankovsky and his really weird bosses. Also, there's the obvious allusions here to this being a prelude with, if he can even get to him to begin with. The next section kind of gave me a good chuckle, a good giggle, if you will. So on Pathologic 3's Steam page, the next section is Paved with Good Intentions. You are a real doctor. Your tools are knowledge and science. In other words, you are not Artemi Burach. You are here to use your physical tools and knowledge to scientifically get to the bottom of whatever's going on. Then on Quarantine's Steam page, we have that corresponding section titled Unreliable Narrator with a picture of the polyhedron. I mean, obviously the polyhedron has a tie-in, but I'm not going to go into the images we see because I just don't have the marbles or time. Anyways, when we are in the shoes of the Bachelor in Pathologic 3, we will be doing our best to accomplish his research goals, but also his goals of saving the town because Bachelor Dankovsky is not a bad person and does not wish ill on this town. That being said, I think in the prequel we will see another side to him. Quote-unquote unreliable narrator. What actually happened here that led him to come to the town other than Isidore's letter? What actually are his goals with thanatology? Does he have ulterior motives? It's, I don't know, just food for thought, medicine for thought, if you will. Sorry, that was such a bad joke. But it just, I don't know, there's something about the unreliable narrator section versus the paved with good intentions sections. Like, they're saying the same thing, but in different ways. So I'm interested to see how that will correspond to what we see in Quarantine. I believe with the next two corresponding sections, we are actually skipping one on the Pathologic 3 Steam page. On the Patho 3 Steam page, we have time is relative, then the bit about time travel. I believe because of how they describe Pathologic 3 in Quarantine's Steam page as a non-chronological adventure, essentially, they are differentiating the two, indicating two different gameplay time elements here. Patho 3 will be non-linear, while Quarantine, I think, will show, obviously, the beginning. I don't think that they're telling us that, but I think Quarantine will be linear gameplay. We're not going to get time travel shenanigans in Quarantine, so we do not have that piece about time on its Steam page. Instead, I believe the next two corresponding sections are Investigating Medicine on Quarantine's page and Town on the Edge in Pathologic 3's Steam page. In Town on the Edge, they tell you you will be diving into the town to fight the disease. Mano e mano. Face the plague head on, burn what can no longer be saved. In Quarantine's piece, I think it is showing us what they mean by fighting the plague. And they kind of say it outright. Fight the sand plague by examining patients and diagnosing them. Honestly, they just say more of kind of what we've already learned from various BK posts throughout the years. We'll have to investigate patients' lives and see what they may be hiding. This will give us more information on why they are responding the way they are to the plague, which will give us more information about the plague. And the last piece here that sticks out to me is face the horrifying personification of the plague in burning flesh. In Pathologic 2, when people are infected, they are wrapped in cloth. You do not see the consequences of this disease in person. This will change since part of Dankovsky's gameplay is actively researching the plague and the effects the plague has on the body. This is how he fights the plague, by learning how it functions as a virus and seeing how it responds to, like I said, the human body and the various differences we see across human bodies. We aren't going to be able to hide from how awful and terrible this disease is anymore the way we are in Artemi's route. That's not to imply that Artemi is hiding from it, but as the player, you really don't see how it affects the human body, just how it affects, the infected districts. We are going to have to face it head on, as Pathologic 3's Steam page says. I think we'll be working with patients in the capital in Quarantine, which will show us more of Dankovsky's day-to-day life, but it will also introduce an important gameplay mechanic, as we have already been told that this will kind of happen. I have a theory about the powers that be, the Canes and Isidore, and how the plague originated, but I will save that for my tinfoil hat piece, there we go, at the end of the video. The last corresponding sections end very similarly. They are both titled Think, 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 except one alludes to the town of the Gorkon and the other just says to read the world. While this is alluding to the fact that the primary set piece will be in the capital, not the town of the Gorkon, I think it is also telling us whatever we learn in the capital will add lots and lots of context to what is going on in Pathologic 3, and in a way Pathologic 2. We don't see much from the powers that be in Patho 2 because sweet old Artemi does not give a flying fuck about them, but Daniil does and has very strong reasons to care about them. So obviously I think with his prequel and how he got here, we will be seeing a lot of that. In conclusion to the what is physically in front of us piece, I think Quarantine will be exactly what they are telling us. I think we're going to learn a lot about the powers that be, what Daniil's day-to-day life was before arriving in this crazy-ass step town, and what his day-to-day research might look like. And I think we're going to see how all of those factors interconnect with each other, and I think we're gonna see a little more behind the curtain and behind the scenes, truthfully, with the powers that be. That is what I am hoping and praying for, at least. We'll also get a sneak peek at some of the game mechanics we'll be using, such as investigating diseases and the Plague Finder itself. But this is where I'm going to start to get into Theoryville, so if you were looking to watch a video without putting on your tinfoil hat, this is your time to switch off. So I'm going to try to condense this in a logical way, but I'm a little pushed for time here, so I am sorry if it doesn't really make sense, but I think it's going to. I'm reading off of a script that I wrote with nothing but 2 cups of coffee and me in a dream, so surely this will flow as I'm intending it to. But to get started, right? The absolute first thing I noticed when looking at Quarantine's Steam page is the game's similar tab. What do you know? It is similar to the Outlast Trials, a game that I played quite a bit. I played it on release, but then it turned into a drinking game for me and my friends. So the majority of my gameplay has been spent drunkenly arm wrestling, but I have played through and released a reagent in the Outlast Trials and played both of the previous games. When I saw this, I thought, I haven't been blacked out in the Outlast Trials lobby in a while. Maybe we should change that. And then I was like, I guess this is kind of a weird comparison, but both are psychological horror, so I guess that makes sense. I wonder if this is the same for the Pathologic 3 Steam page. Then I checked that, and Pathologic 3 is not similar to Outlast Trials. It is similar to Sons of the Forest. Like I said, I've played Outlast Trials. I've also played a good bit of Sons of the Forest and watched a lot of content on it. None of them line up gameplay mechanic-wise to what we've been told about Pathologic 3 or Quarantine. Unless in Quarantine, the powers that be are actually a deranged cop with vague sexual inclinations chasing you down, then the math isn't quite mathing on the game mechanic front. So I thought, let's look at what we know about the Sons of the Forest plot and what we know about Dankovsky, and then correspond. I'm going to super overgeneralize the plot of Sons of the Forest here, and I might be employing a little bit of confirmation bias to support my theories, so please take everything I'm saying with a little bit of a grain of salt. In Sons of the Forest, you are arriving to an island to rescue a rich family after their resort has absolutely gone to shit. So you have a mission, but once you get there, you realize some crazy science shit has been happening, which ties back into the first game, The Forest. And your mission then becomes surviving and solving what happened to the resort and to these people you were supposed to save. It turns out, which, spoilers for Sons of the Forest here, that the family that you were there to save fell victim to the science craziness. And then your next mission becomes escaping the island. But the only way to do this is through getting to the bottom of what is going on at the island. In Pathologic 3, I think we'll see something similar. The arrival in town to complete one goal, proving immortality, then everything falling to shit immediately. And the only way out is going through solving what is going on. Obviously, this is, again, overgeneralized, but I'm going somewhere with this, trust me, we're going in a direction. Why would a demo of Pathologic 3... I also don't know jack shit about the algorithm that is in charge of the suggested games tab. Similar to Sons of the Forest, what makes the prequel different in terms of plot that would not also relate it back to the Sons of the Forest in terms of similarity, right? Do you see what I'm saying here? I hope so. So I could be a little off my rocker here, but the powers that be are mentioned in Quarantine's Steam page, whereas they are not in Pathologic 3's. In Pathologic 3, I think we will obviously be focused on the plague in front of us, but in Quarantine, I think we're going to get, like I've already said, a huge look behind the curtain on what is setting up the main plot in Pathologic 3, and by proxy in Pathologic 2. Now to the big tin, but put your bigger tinfoil hat on. I'm sorry in advance. In Outlast Trials, the game that is, according to Steam, similar to Quarantine, you can volunteer, or are more likely snatched off the street, to go through a series of trials. These are run by the Murkoff Corporation, which would be the quote-unquote powers that be in the Outlast universe. They put you through physically and emotionally brutal trials and then grade you on your performance. At the end of the trials, you are then sent off into the world as a sleeper agent in a Cold War. The main lessons being taught during these trials are how to be obedient, how to be controlled, how to be manipulated, and how to receive direction from the Murkoff Corporation. They are essentially emotionally and physically abusing you to mold you into someone they can use in the real world to puppeteer events. This is what I want to hone in on, especially the puppeteering events piece. In quarantine, I think we're going to get a front row seat to them doing this to Dankovsky for whatever their end goal gain is. I don't know what the end goal gain is. I'm not going to go for the low-hanging Cold War fruit because I'm not entirely sure that is what IPL is wanting to reference here. Could be wrong, but we also get the inclination and knowledge in Pathologic 2 that the plague was supposed to be a trial for the townspeople and the town as a whole. Isidore, in his letter to Artemy, even says that there's a difficult trial happening in the town. We know Isidore and Simon had knowledge of this and were intent that it should happen for the sake of the town itself. What if, though, they were not the only ones who had prior knowledge of this? They were invested in the outcome of this trial to the point that they were willing to die for it. But what is the outcome? What is the end goal? What is the purpose of this? Obviously, that might look different to Artemy versus the Bachelor or Isidore versus Simon. But I also wonder if the powers that be were involved in the orchestrating of this. They obviously seem to have some sort of animosity with Dankovsky and his research, but what if that's just a front? What if that's just a bluff? I know the tinfoil hat is on, but if the powers that be are the Murkoff Corporation of this world, and I think we will see that this entire quote-unquote trial and experiment was meant for something more than just the elevation of the town. I think we're going to get a sneak peek. I don't know if we're going to get what it was for. I don't think they would drop that much into a demo of a game that hasn't released yet. But I do think we will see a little more about the powers that be, that they are way more involved in the town of the Gorkon than we may have originally thought. And maybe we'll see what their overall intention for Dankovsky is. I think we'll certainly see them in less of a Dankovsky's weird bosses, light, and more of a bigger world power who's using whatever happens in these 12 days to apply elsewhere in the world sort of lens. Or maybe they're taking what they learned from the town on the Gorkon to use in the capital. I don't really know. But I think that there will be a strong similarity or tie-in between the Murkoff Corporation and the way they function in the Outlast universe and the way the powers that be are functioning in the Pathologic universe. Or hear me out, they're both just psychological horror, and I have rambled for the last 10 minutes for absolutely nothing, which I think with how my luck tends to go might actually be the case. That being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. This was so much fun to make. If you don't know already, I am currently uploading a day-by-day playthrough of Pathologic 2, where I try to add some narrative and gameplay mechanic context to what is going on. For fans that maybe aren't as caught up to date on Pathologic 2 and may not be entirely certain on what's going on, because let's be honest, Pathologic can be a little confusing sometimes. But it's also just a way for me to play through the game again and have a lot of fun doing it, because I like making content, and I really like making Pathologic content. Did you agree with anything I said today? Did you disagree with anything I said today? Please let me know in the comments. You guys who have commented on my previous videos are always super respectful, even when you're disagreeing, and I really, really appreciate it, because as a fan of this series, all I want is to give this series more light and bring more hype to Pathologic 3, because I think it's going to be an amazing game. And the more it sells, the more we have a chance of getting a Clara game. So anyways, and if you did enjoy this at all, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. The buttons make me happy. I appreciate it. Also go check out my good friend Meg over on Twitter, where she also talks a lot of Pathologic stuff. And personally, I miss a lot of the classic context side of things, and she's able to help me through that, and I really appreciate it, so make sure you go check her out. And if you find any part of this video entertaining in the slightest, and you want to come hang out with us on Twitch and in Discord, the links for that will be in the description below. But like I said, thank you again if you made it to this point in the video. Very much appreciate you, and I will see you in the next one. Peace!